At the Orlando Invitational, the keynote was delivered by a gentleman by the name of Adrian Davis. His firm, Whetstone Consulting, focuses on adding a scientific methodology to a successful sales practice. And I actually had Adrian provide me with one of the slides out of this presentation. I don't have time to go into the context around this, but I can tell you that as he spoke, he described to me a lot of the journey that we went through. Certainly the idea of being a stranger in a relationship life cycle, to the idea of being a supplier, moving to a desired supplier state, and finally to something that I really prided myself on in the work that our people had been able to do, and that is reach a level of trusted advisor with many of our client organizations. I know that's something that all of you in this room have also achieved. But as Adrian spoke, it really dawned on me that as good as we've done, I'm not sure we were really at that true trusted advisor state. We had opportunities, we had relationships that we certainly enjoyed, we had profitable engagements, but were we really trusted advisors or were we desired suppliers? And it really dawned on me that there was more work for us to do. And as I had that realization, Adrian went into a whole new level of customer engagement. The idea of moving beyond trusted advisor to become a strategic ally with your key partners. And to move in that direction was a profound shift, a very different body of work, and not something that you could just continue operating in the same de facto manner. And that really intrigued me. To move to the level of strategic ally meant a number of things, and a number of things that we weren't doing. And after that presentation, I sought out Joanne to say, hey, what did you think of Adrian's presentation? Because not everybody even liked this presentation. I'm sure many of you saw it, but it struck a chord with me. And I guess that's one of the messages, is that this is something that we found that was relevant, that we felt we could bring back to our organization. And Joanne kind of asked me, well, what did you think of it? And I said, for the first time, I don't really want to scribble these notes down and deliver them secondhand to our organization. I'm thinking, what does it look like if we actually bring Adrian into our team? And Joanne just laughed. She had already seen Adrian speak, and that was one of the reasons that she had actually arranged to have him at that invitational, was because she thought it could bring value to this community, and that I, in particular, would be struck by this message. So it was that we brought Adrian into our sales organization, a sales organization that had been successful, but that had hit maybe a bit of a wall, but that was made up of some grassroots, genuine, great people. And when Adrian arrived on the scene, there was sort of three fundamental shifts, I guess, that needed to happen in what we were doing. The first is that if we were going to reach a strategic ally level in our relationships, this can't happen at the level that we're working with. In fact, this can only happen at the CEO level. This can only happen in the C-suite. So we needed to change the level of engagement that we were working at, and this isn't something that we had in our bag. I was proud of the team that we had, and I thought we had done some great work, but we weren't engaging like that. Maybe at the occasional lunch to say thanks for the business from the perspective of diplomacy, but we weren't engaged at that level. That was a profound shift that needed to happen. The second thing that we worked on and learned is a best practice in sales, specifically in IT, that I think, regardless of your strategy, and certainly in my case, was overlooked, and that is the value of research. Proper research prior to a discussion, a meeting, and going into an opportunity or an engagement. And so with Adrian, we learned how to research an organization, how to engage with the suppliers to understand what challenges they're facing in working with that organization, how to read an annual report back to front so that we learned the facts and the situation first, and then understood the story that was being weaved around that, and how to draw strategic lines of questioning out of those types of documents. That, in conjunction with a shift to the C-suite, really meant a complete change for our sales organization, even though the people remained the same. And the final piece that I think was a profound shift in what we did is something that Adrian called A-Sale. And A-Sale is simply an acronym to describe the recipe that we are going to use when we go into a discussion or a meeting with a C-level visionary, because this is a very different conversation than we'd ever had, and then certainly that you would have at the director of IT level within your client organizations. And it simply describes that conversation. A being amenity, the initial stages of the discussion, important to be at ease and comfortable, and obviously set up a laid-back, and I don't mean in the traditional sales sense, like you see the fish on the wall, hey, fish, I fish, or the, hey, I take family summer vacations, or hey, food, I eat food. You know, it's like every salesperson who comes into that office is gonna do that. This is a little bit different. We've worked to build a sales team of genuine people, and there's an opportunity here to just let that shine through a little bit. And that's somewhat self-effacing. We might be a little bit nervous, but also prepared. Might be very excited about the discussion, but also very serious about what we're doing here. And that shines through, and that differentiates us right out of the gate. Strategic context. Right from the first question that we ask, it needs to be readily apparent that we've done our homework and that we're here to talk about something at a little bit different level. You know, we're not going to talk about how many seats are you. We're going to talk about, you know, we've seen in the last quarterly business review that you're reporting diminishing returns on efforts to gain share. Does that mean we can expect to see a growth through acquisition strategy emerge? Well, yeah. In fact, if you talk to some of our partners, you'll understand that we're currently in the final stages of several acquisitions for the first time that will see us grow in this manner. Attention focusing. So as the and we're talking to visionary leaders in companies, these people, and I'm sure that if they're anything like yourselves, we could talk all hour just on the strategic direction of the organization. We need to move the conversation towards to focus their attention into some of the roadblocks and challenges that they're going to face as they execute on this vision. If you're going to grow through acquisition, you're going to be faced with different standards, different corporate cultures. How are you going to handle that, right? And the next stage of the discussion is probably the most difficult in terms of working to create a linkage, not something that we identify or that we say that we can do, but we need that leader to start to think about the role that not even ourselves, but that a strategic partner could play in moving that organization forward. So from a linkage perspective, we need an organization that can work independently with both organizations as they come together, but still provide the same technology standards and methodologies so that we can work to align the organization and then drive efficiencies going forward. And that leads us into the final stage of the discussion, an envisioning stage, where we're going to leave a CEO thinking about what it looks like when the vision finally comes together and the role that this partner has played in moving that forward. And that is a great way to end a discussion with somebody who's visionary and passionate about what they're doing. If we have a partner who can work independently with both organizations, we can drive shareholder value, first through increased revenue from the acquisition, and then secondly through lean initiatives over time, which is something that we're used to working in. And that sort of recipe for a discussion is something that Adrian warned me when he comes into a successful sales organization, talks about engaging at the CEO level, talks about doing a whole bunch of research before every meeting, and then talks about following a recipe for a discussion like this. There's often a lot of resistance. And sure enough, Jeff, our $30,000 man, approached Adrian after the first session and said, hey, you know what? I have some serious concerns about what we're doing. And Adrian kind of looked at me like, here we go. And I can tell you, Jeff looked at him and said, you know, if I'm going to be talking to a CEO, I don't think I know enough words. And I mean, only Jeff. So Adrian just shook his head and laughed, and I think at that moment really understood what kind of a culture we had at WBM. So at any rate, we really embraced this. We practiced it as a team, and we sucked. Like, we were the worst at this. We couldn't even get through a single discussion. But we did get better at it. And from the first time we held a discussion like this to the current state that we're in, where we approach everything like this, we have a repeatable methodology that what this has really done is drive a tremendous degree of confidence into our organization in engaging at a level that we had never engaged in before. And as we've done this now over time, we find ourselves in what I believe is a very differentiated standard in terms of professionalism and approach. We're expected to host a discussion like this when we call a meeting. And that is an interesting situation to be in. We're bringing a level of preparedness now that really facilitates true understanding. At the trusted advisor level, we had insight into what the solutions needed to look like. But at a strategic alliance level, we have insight into why the solutions even exist in the first place. And that's where we need to be if we're going to stay moving in lockstep with our partners over time. We're hosting discussions that are rich in strategic context and memorable to the business leaders and enlightening on both sides of the coin. And another point of our process is a follow-up series of documents that encapsulates the discussion that we've had and summarizes the points that we touched on. And we're finding that as those discussion notes are sent to the executive assistants, et cetera, in these C-level offices, they're actually provoking follow-up. Great job, guys. You know, you captured it, but you missed this, and this issue on the union front. And it's provoking continued engagement at that level. And from our perspective, again, the biggest thing, the confidence that we've gained to do this repeatedly over time. And the coolest thing about it is, from the perspective of our culture, this is a scientific formula that's repeatable, that's driving very high-level engagements, but this isn't a cold sales methodology. This is a process that's based in genuine personal relationships, personal experiences, and achievement. And that's something that that is fit right in.